power. "All set to go," the computer stated, as he changed, by fractions of arc, the course plotters of the automatic integrating goniometer. "You're the doctor, but I'm glad it's you that'll have to explain to the observatory," and Breckinridge set his exceedingly delicate excess power potentiometer exactly upon the indicated figure. "Well, we've got a few minutes left for a chin-chin before we lift her off." "What's all this commotion about? Dish out the lowdown." "Well, it's like this, Steve. We pilots are having one sweet time. We're being growled at on every trip. The management squawks if we're 30 seconds plus or minus at the terminals, and the passenger department squalls if we change acceleration 5 centimeters total en route. Claims it upsets the dainty customers and loses business for the road. They're tightening up on us all the time. Couple of years ago, you remember, it didn't make any difference what we did with the acceleration as long as we checked in somewhere near zero time. We used to spin 'em dizzy when we reversed at the halfway station, but that kind of stuff doesn't go anymore. We've got to hold the acceleration constant and close to normal. Got to hold our schedule on zero, plus or minus 10 seconds. And yet, we've got to make any detours they tell us to, such as this 7 million kilometer thing they handed us just now. To make things worse, we've got to take orders at every check station, and yet we get the blame for everything that happens as a consequence of obeying those orders. Of course, I know as well as you do that it's rotten technique to change acceleration at every check station, but we've told them over and over that we can't do any better until they put a real computer on every ship, and tell the check stations to report meteorites and other obstructions to us, and then to let us alone. So you'd better recommend us some computers. You're getting rotten computation, that's a sure thing, and I don't blame you pilots for yelling. But I don't believe that you've got the right answer. I can't help but think that the astronomers are lying down on the job. They are so sure that you pilots are to blame that it hasn't occurred to them to check up on themselves very carefully. However, we'll know pretty quick, and then we'll take steps. I hope so. But say, Steve, I'm worried about using that much plus equilibrium power. Remember, we've got to hit M14 in absolutely good shape, or plenty heads will drop. I'll say they will. I know just how the passengers will howl if we hold them weightless for half an hour, waiting for those 2 moons to get out of the way, and I know just what the manager will do if we check in minus 31 minutes. Wow, he'll swell up and bust, sure. But don't worry, Breck. If we don't check in all right, anybody can have my head that wants it, and I'm taking full responsibility, you know. You're welcome to it. Breckinridge shrugged and turned the conversation into a lighter vein. Speaking of weightlessness, it's funny how many weight fiends there are in the world, isn't it? You'd think the passengers would enjoy a little weightlessness occasionally, especially the fat ones, but they don't. But say, while I think of it, how come you were here and loose to make this checkup? I thought you were out with the other 2 of the big 3, solving all the mysteries of the universe. Had to stay in this trip. Been doing some work on the ether, force field theory, and other advanced stuff that I had to go to Mars and Venus to get. Just got back last week. As for solving mysteries, laugh while you can, old hyena. You and a lot of other dim bulbs think that Roser's rays are the last word, that there's nothing left to discover, are going to get jarred loose from your hinges one of these days. When I came in 9 months ago, they were hot on the trail of something big, and I'll bet they bring it in. Out upon the dock, an insistent siren blared a crescendo and diminuendo blast of sound, and 2 minutes remained. In every stateroom and in every lounge and saloon speakers sounded a warning. For a short time, while we are pulling clear of the gravitational field of the Earth, walking will be somewhat difficult, as everything on board will apparently increase in weight by about 1/5 of its present amount. Please remain seated, or move about with caution. In about an hour, weight will gradually return to normal. We start in 1 minute. Hype! barked the chief pilot as a flaring purple light sprang into being upon his board, and the assistants came to attention at their stations. "Seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, lift!" He touched a button, and a set of plunger switches drove home, releasing into the 45 enormous driving projectors the equilibrium power, the 15,000 and odd kilofrancs of energy that exactly counterbalanced the pull of gravity upon the mass of the cruiser. Simultaneously, there was added from the potentiometer, already set to the exact figure given by the computer, the plus equilibrium power, which would not be changed throughout the journey if the ideal acceleration curve were to be registered upon the recorders, and the immense mass of the cruiser of the void wafted vertically upward at a low and constant velocity. The bellowing, shrieking siren had cleared the air magically of the swarm of aircraft in her path, and quietly, calmly, majestically, the Arcturus floated upward. Breckenridge, 60 seconds after the initial lift, actuated the system of magnetic relays which would gradually cut in the precisely measured starting power, which it would be necessary to employ for 69 minutes, for without the acceleration given by this additional power, they would lose many precious hours of time in covering merely the few thousands of miles during which Earth's attraction would operate powerfully against their progress. Faster and faster the great cruiser shot upward as more and more of the starting power was released, and heavier the passengers felt themselves become. Soon the full calculated power was on, and the acceleration became constant. Weight no longer increased, but remained constant at a value of plus 23 6/10%. For a few moments there had been uneasy stomachs among the passengers. Perhaps a few of the first trippers had been made ill, but it was not much worse than riding in a high-speed elevator, particularly since there was no change from positive to negative acceleration, such as is experienced in express elevators. The computer, his calculations complete, watched the pilot with interest, for, accustomed as he was to traversing the depths of space, there was a never-failing thrill to his scientific mind in the delicacy and precision of the work which Breckenridge was doing, work which could be done only by a man who had long training in the profession, and who was possessed of instantaneous nervous reaction and of the highest degree of manual dexterity and control. Under his right and left hands were the double-series potentiometers, actuating the variable speed drives of the flight angle directors in the hour and declination ranges. Before his eyes was the finely marked micrometer screen upon which the guiding goniometer threw its needlepoint of light. Powerful optical systems of prisms and lenses revealed to his sight the director angles, down to fractional seconds of arc. It was the task of the chief pilot to hold the screened image of the crosshairs of the two directors in such position relative to the ever-moving point of light as to hold the mighty vessel precisely upon its course, in spite of the complex system of forces acting upon it. For almost an hour Breckenridge sat motionless, his eyes flashing from micrometer screen to signal panel, his sensitive fingers moving the potentiometers through minute arcs because of what he saw upon the screen, and in instantaneous response to the flashing, multicolored lights and tinkling signals of his board. Finally, far from Earth, the moon's attraction and other perturbing forces comparatively slight, the signals no longer sounded and the point of light ceased its irregular motion, becoming almost stationary. The chief pilot brought both crosshairs directly upon the brilliant point, which for some time they had been approaching more and more nearly, adjusted the photocells and amplifiers which would hold them immovably upon it, and at the calculated second of time cut out the starting power by means of another set of automatically timed relays. When only the regular driving power was left, and the acceleration had been checked and found to be exactly the designated value of 981.286 centimeters, he stood up and heaved a profound sigh of relief. "Well, Steve, that's over with. We're on our way. I'm always glad when this part of it's done." "It's a ticklish job, no fooling, even for an expert," the mathematician agreed. "No wonder the astronomers think you birds are the ones who are gumming up their dope. Well, it's about time to plug in on E2. Here's where the fire